Mumbai, in Shanghai, in Singapore, in Stockholm, it's time for some city talk. As we speak here, what kind of urban agriculture actions are taking in your respective cities? If you start in Shanghai.
In Shanghai, okay, I think I can only give my perspective and my experience. I'm a designer and a design educator and a design researcher, but now I'm working on trying to link the city and the countryside together, and the urban agriculture and become one of the key topics.
And in New York?
Well, there's a lot of activity, particularly with regards to building greenhouses on tops of flat roofs. We have two major corporations now in business. One is called Gotham Greens. It's a 2,000 square foot facility in Brooklyn, New York. There are 5 boroughs of New York City, and Brooklyn is the largest of the boroughs. And this clever designer identified flat roofs as a way of getting more land in use for agriculture. So that's one. And we have another one called Bright Farms, but they are about to expand by a log factor of maybe about 10 more. So Gotham Greens right now is 2,000 square feet. They're building a 60 and a 90,000 square foot greenhouse. So I see this activity as really a major step forward, because eventually they're going to say, we've used all the roofs up, now we're going to have to start building them on top of each other. And the moment they do that, that will be a vertical farm. So I have lots of activity in New York City.
Cool.
Yeah, very cool.
We heard what's doing here in Linköping, but how about the capital of Sweden?
Yeah, I think that Sweden maybe is in another position than New York. We have not yet started to implement. But we have started, I think it's a process ongoing on many levels. It starts in the small scale, in allotment gardens, community garden movement, lots of association of people coming together to cultivate on their courthouses. So I think this is the starting point for movement and transformation. And at the same time, we are planning the Royal Seaport, that will be the new leading edge area of Stockholm. And that area, I think that's on the planning stage to prepare for solutions of this kind. But for example, one interesting effort is to have a green space indicator, that you have 60% green space in every block. So it's possible to, it will be sort of legally possible to use this green space for many purposes. It could be green areas for recreation, for social values, but also for cultivation and for agriculture. The space could be vertical, it could be horizontal on the rooftops, it could be on the courtyard. So we can say we are in a planning stage, but we have not fully sort of, it's an open area for innovation and for technology and for collaboration. So I think we should utilize, we have a window of opportunity that we should use, I think. More than solutions.
Yeah. Haven't done so much yet.
No, but we have the opportunity to.
The opportunity to, okay. How about Singapore?
Yes, Singapore actually is a little backed off. You all know it's a very small country. We have limited land. We actually import 90%, more than 90% of food. And now, actually, Singapore is moving actually from a passive food importer actually to a larger scale of food productions. And we don't have land. We cannot expand horizontally. So now what we can do is expand vertically. So now we actually have the first vertical farm in Singapore, just commercialized last year. But it's very small scale. It's only about 3 hectares, very, very small. So now we're thinking to have larger scale vertical farming. Yeah, that's what we are trying to do. Maybe just focus on leafy vegetable productions. Yeah.
Okay, and finally, how's Mumbai?
Well, crowded to say the least. We have 3.2 million people living in the city. It's not too larger than Singapore, and we have 3.2 million people. The most important positive aspect when I sit here on Urban Agriculture Summit to talk about Mumbai is that this particular development for food production and vegetation within the city has now fully moved into the private developer space. We are no longer dependent on the government purely for want of passion for the result and the intention to achieve. So it's the real estate industry within the city that has taken the onus, pretty much taken the bull by the horns. We do realize we need to have a lot of good asset capital. We also realize that food that's coming in from the cities is clearly insufficient for the growing population. 3.2 million is still a huge sum to feed. Coupled with that is the ideology that we must ensure that our food is of good quality as well. Now, skyscrapers in the city, which are exceeding the 100-floor, 90-meter, 80-meter mark, are all beginning to look at it a little more than just water harvesting, a little more than just green walls. So I think it's the beginning of the next green revolution for us. We know we have the capital, we know we have the intention. Now we just need to plant the gun right in the heart of the action.
They're of course willing to help you, right? So how do you feel about this huge challenge that we have? What do you say?
Okay, if I start from me, I think that it's rather, I think it's, we call it a challenge. It's really, I agree that it's an opportunity. And in design, we always say that where the problems, there is the need of design. And also, I think now because now the D schools and the B schools, now we are collaborating more close than before. So you also say that, okay, there also means business opportunities. And I think that I'm a sustainable guy. I'm talking about the sustainability and the design of sustainable buildings. But I think that for me, two things is very important when we talk about sustainability. The first is to understand the capacity of this planet. And the second is how to take advantage of the most relevant tools. And at the present, I would say that the business is one of the utmost important tools we have. So we start everything from what we have, actually. So I think that maybe I can add a few words about what I'm doing, because before I talk in such an abstract way. Yeah. And actually, we start from the idea is very simple, that to try to promote the interaction between the city and the countryside. And we start from the city, we start from the countryside, because at the present in China, I mean, if you go to countryside, I think this is really the worst place, and no job opportunity, very poor economic situation, and no young people, no educated people. Anyway, that's almost a hopeless, lands. And but we think that all of these things, if you really think about what is a countryside, all of these characters, they are not the key features of countryside. So one of the key, I would say that the essence of countryside, it's related to the ways of living and the ways of producing. And agriculture play a key role. So we designers, we go to the countryside and exactly start from what they have and try to explore the advantages of the rural ways of living and the rural ways of producing. So this is our first step, and we come to the idea to establish, promote a network of innovation hubs, which is a combined community center, it's entrepreneurship supporter, etc., together, and prototype of new business models. And at the same time, now we are starting to promote this same idea in the city, which means that in the city also there's to promote such kind of innovation hubs. And anyway, the starting point is exactly urban agriculture stuff. So maybe it will be related, to the greenhouse and the education center, etc., So the idea of this innovation hub network, actually, that we apply both in the city and the countryside.
Dixon, what do you think is the biggest challenge?
Well, I think when you look at the amount of water that agriculture uses, outdoor agriculture uses over 70% of the available fresh water in the world. And, we need to drink some of that water. And we have to drink some of that water that's been contaminated with agricultural runoff, which is the world's biggest polluter. So I can tell you that my city of New York, 8 million people, uses 1 billion gallons of water every day. 1 billion gallons. Now, you'd say, well, if you recycle 1 billion gallons of water, even 500 million gallons of water, then you're behaving ecological. So what does New York City do with its water after it uses it? It essentially desludges it, in a central facility on Ward's Island and ships it back to the 14 water treatment plants that generated that to begin with, treats it with a little chlorine, and throws it away. So I once gave this presentation to some people in Jordan, to the Academy of Sciences that met in Amman, Jordan, and they couldn't believe that one city was producing enough water to actually provide it for an entire country. Here was a country with no water that was saying, well, we'll take that water. And now what if every city had built into its charter that you had to recycle all the gray water? And that's one of the pushes that I'm aiming for in this ecological way of thinking about how to behave at a city level. New York City needs to set an example. They've got a great way of getting water to the city. They've created a Romanesque series of underground canals, and they even have an aqueduct that looks like a Roman aqueduct, and it brings water to 8 million people, and it's almost free. At 5 cents a gallon, you can imagine how cheap that is, right? And it's good water. It's not contaminated with any microbes or heavy metals or any contaminants that you would consider obnoxious. But then we just abuse it like we think this is nothing. And yet, if that were oil, we would protect it with our lives. So I think we need to take another look at the way cities behave with water, just water. And if you could get the city councils of the world to create a charter that says, we need to recycle half of the water we use, even if 50% of the water a city used was reused for not even drinking, maybe industrial purposes, or maybe to keep engines cooler, anything that you use water for anyway. We flush toilet water in New York City that's drinkable. We use drinking water to
we
flush
do the same
toilets.
way in Sweden. It's totally crazy.
Absolutely crazy
Yeah.
thinking. So we need to stop thinking crazy and start thinking like nature. And nature doesn't throw anything away. Nothing.
Hetje, what do we need to do to ensure fuel security?
Okay. Is that what's the biggest challenge for us? In Singapore, we have to use a very innovative way for urban agriculture because we are from the tropical climate. So urban agriculture will not just produce a local, for example, use vegetable as example. We not just produce local vegetable. We also need to grow vegetable from temperate, subtropical. So need energy to cool the plants. So, but actually we now be very innovative. We use the way just cooling the root zone. And also for vertical farming, actually we need to have artificial light. And so now actually the bigger challenge is we need to get the government organization funding to support us. This one part is actually very challenging because they always talk about the production cost is very high. But for research, actually, we try to reduce production costs, but we do need financial support for R&D. And also I feel that we also need the consumer support as well, because import vegetable from neighboring countries is very cheap, and does not encourage people to grow their own vegetable in their own country. So we need to have a consumer education, for example, for the carbon footprint for vegetable productions, for food productions. I feel that actually is not just a scientist's job, actually politician, policymaker, and even for the consumers. We all have to play our role.
What do you think in Mumbai? What do we need to do to ensure fuel security?
Well, I'm probably from the only city which has taken the mandate to the real estate and the private enterprise. Obviously, that consequently means that having public and institutional support is the first challenge for us. The other positive, though, when it's in private enterprise, is that we know we have the market by our side. Fundamentally today, even if it's not organic but clean, healthy food, it's a market that's growing at about upwards of 66% because of hotels and international schools and the immense amount of corporate world that Mumbai as a city encompasses. So on one hand, we do know that this is financially capable for any enterprise project to take over. On the other hand, we're always a little skeptical that we must first ensure that we get public institution support and backing. The other thing particularly about Mumbai is it is an organic city, so to speak. Not many cities here on the dais are so organic as we are. We've just grown because we found no other way to sustain ourselves. Now, that kind of growth may or may not be effective as far as logistics is concerned. That's one other reason why the public institution needs to look into organic cities and try and see some kind of food security or safety plan to be installed right in the heart of the city. Organic cities do not have the luxury of established logistics. And that is one of the most important criteria when it comes to distribution. This is a long-term vision, but it is necessary a vision.
Like Stockholm, you sit in the middle of kind of big cities,
yes.
right?
I think that you're often colored by your own perspective. I'm an urban planner or a designer. I think my reflection on this, that I agree really upon the resource efficiency issue, that is very important, that we really close the loops and so on. At the same time, I think we have to look on two levels at the same time. We have to prepare, we have a planning system to utilize it, to have a strategic long-term plan, at least 2050, maybe 2100, to integrate this issue in all planning levels. I mean, we do the comprehensive plans today without this perspective. We just, it's kind of self-evident that food will come somewhere from. I think we should integrate this in the planning of new city districts on the regional level, because we have a regional enlargement where you commute long distances. Then we have also the option for public transport, but also to have the closeness between urban cores and agriculture. So we have to prepare this in the overall scale. At the same time, I think we have to promote local initiative in the existing areas, because in Sweden we have only 1% new built areas every year, in comparison with China, where you have 20 million new people every year in cities. So I think we have to renovate our housing areas, for example, with this in mind. We have an interesting example in Sweden, in the Gothenburg area, where we have a renovation where you have greenhouses in small scale added to the buildings. It's not high-tech, but it's a starting point. So I think we should have small-scale renovation with a participatory approach, because I think awareness is very important. That people are aware of this on a very tangible scale. So they feel it on this sort of family scale. And at the same time, we have the strategic planning on the more urban, regional city scale. So these efforts must be done at the same time.
Dixon, just very shortly, what do you think we can achieve during these 3 days here in Linköping, during this conference?
It's all about literacy, and in this case, it's urban agricultural literacy, and you're going to create the dictionary. That's what I hope we do here today and tomorrow and the next day, is that we tell the world that this is a subject, that this is an industry, that this is a behavior pattern, that this is the way the world should behave in the near future. We should plan this into our next iteration. That's what I hope.
Thank you so much for coming.